What's up guys, Mike here from Ekim Knives, and I'm back with another somewhat controversial video. Now you know me, I'm not one to stir the pot. I'm not one to get involved in any of this knife maker drama or the knife world drama. I'm an easygoing guy. I have no interest in that stuff. But I feel this video needs to be made because it's a topic that nobody talks about. Makers are scared to bring it up. Consumers don't want to discuss it or just are oblivious to it. So I'm gonna put it out in the open like that, and let's see what happens. Now, since I clickbaited you in here, let's continue on with a little bit of mystery, and I'm gonna make you guess at what is the difference between these two blades, aside from the fact that one has dye on it. Now, they're both finished to the same level of satin, both very similar grinds, hollow ground, same steel, same blade shape, same everything. There is a difference. Have you guessed what it is? Well, I'll tell you. This one was freehand ground on a 12-inch wheel by me, and this one was ground on the same 12-inch wheel, but I used a jig. That's right, I said it. The infamous J word, the jig. Now, this is something that makers do not speak about for whatever reason there is. And for those of you that don't know what a jig is one of these. And what it does is you put the knife on the jig, you bolt it right here, and it holds that angle. It holds a consistent angle, and you slide it back and forth on the work rest to get an even grind. Now, let me start this conversation by saying this statement that I firmly believe in. There's no such thing as cheating in knife making. But there's a caveat to that. There's a huge but. There's no such thing as cheating in knife making, provided you're honest about it. So if you jig grind every blade you ever ground, you just gotta tell people that you do it that way, and there's no problem. So hey, I made this awesome knife here, and it's just as good as this one. The grinds look just as good, but I used the jig. No big deal. Or let's say you use a CNC machine. Hey, I thought I needed a CNC machine to take my quality level, my consistency level, to here when I was down here doing it by hand. So I think I need a CNC to hit that quality level, to provide a better product for my customers. Right? Yeah, it's not handmade anymore, but you're getting a better knife. Right? That's an example of somebody being honest about it. And sure, is that going to turn some customers away? Absolutely. Right? There are people that very much care whether or not a knife is made on a CNC machine, or it's jig ground, or made in China, or whatever the case is. And if you're honest about it, you might lose a few customers. But your integrity is what really matters here. Keep in mind, guys, as a knife maker, you're selling a part of your soul. Right? You're not just selling a knife, you're selling you. You're selling your personality. Your blood, sweat, and tears goes into every design. Every knife you make, whether it's on a CNC, it's jig ground or freehand ground, or you made it all with files and sandpaper and in a forge. You're selling part of you. And the second your integrity slips is the second you lose credibility, I guess. Being able to freehand grind is like getting street cred for being a knife maker. Nobody cares. There are a handful of people that care, and you know what? They'll move on to the next buyer, the next maker. So just be honest about it, and that's it. Well, I don't know why we refuse to talk about this. Right? Go on Instagram. Tell me how many jigs you find on Instagram. Now, let me also say this. In 3 years of making knives, I've had that many people ask me whether I jig or freehand grind. I don't know if that's because you see my videos and you know that I know how to freehand, because you've seen me do it. I've taught a lot of you how to freehand grind. Nobody's ever asked me if I freehand ground the knife or not. So because of the YouTube thing, and you know, a lot of you guys know me, I asked a bunch of other makers. if they get that question, and they all said the same thing. Nobody ever asks. So are we blowing this thing way out of proportion when it doesn't need to be? I don't know. And I'm not here as the shining knight to defend jigs. That's not the case. I'm just trying to take an unbiased look at things. Now, up until I made the albatross, and this is a specific reason why I got this jig, and it's because of this blade shape. We'll get into that a little bit more later. But until this knife, I freehand ground everything, including a few of these albatrosses. Before I get into why I have one, let's go over some of the benefits and some of the downsides of having a jig. So, the biggest benefit is you get consistent grinds, and it's a lot easier. So you don't need as much skill. It doesn't take, so to get halfway decent at grinding, you're gonna have to ruin a lot of blades doing it freehand. And I know a lot of you out there struggling with this right now. Can you get better results sooner with a jig? Yes, you can. I'll be completely honest there. You can. But if you're not learning freehand first, you're never gonna get the max out of your jig either. Freehand teaches you a lot of the little intricacies of knife making and grinding, right? Of how to watch your heat, how thin to make it, and what kind of motion you need to move across the abrasive belt when you're grinding. Those are all things that you feel and you pick up over time of freehand grinding. That will directly translate into using your jig. If you go straight jig from day one, you're never going to learn that stuff. Well, you might, but it's going to take you a lot longer, right? The other benefit of it is it's very consistent. So if you were to make 100 knives and they all had to have the same exact grind, then maybe jigs are an answer for you. And there are a few production companies that do this. Now, don't worry, knife makers, because I'm not going to throw you under the bus. And the reason I say that is because I know a lot of knife makers because of this channel and because of the knife world. I'm friends with a lot of people, and I know that 90% of them use jigs. Yep. It's a staggering number. I was surprised myself because especially when you do it for a job and you have to make money, you don't have time to sit here and learn freehand. I had the benefit of my full-time job and it took me 3 years, but I learned it. I'm still not perfect at it. I still have a long way to go, and I still plan on freehand grinding. I'm not switching over. I'm not switching teams here. But there was a staggering amount of makers that use jigs and keep it a secret. The downside of using a jig, and because of freehanding and because of using it now, and now that I have a little bit of experience, I feel I could speak to some of the strong points and weak points doing it both ways. So the biggest downside of the jig is, number one, is setup time. If you're doing one-offs, if I'm going to make one of these blades, right, and I'm never going to make another one, good luck, because you're going to be messing around with the jig, doing a lot of trial and error work, and some math, and figuring out to get the grind where you want it. It's a lot harder to hollow grind with a jig, which is what I do. Flat grinding, from what I understand, is a little bit easier. I haven't tried a flat grind on a jig. I just did the one model. Some of the other downsides is you can't watch your heat. So if you're going to jig grind the right way, you have to automatically assume that your knife is overheating all the time. Which means you have to dip it in water or run a cool mist setup or something to keep that blade cool, because your fingers are not in direct contact with the blade. You can't tell how hot it's getting. So when I jig grind, I am soaked. The whole front of my shirt is completely soaked because I have to take this huge thing, dip it in the bucket of water, take it out, and then put it right back down and go and make one pass and then take it and dip it again. So it's kind of annoying, but it's what you have to do to watch your heat. Now, to get into why I have one, and I'll show you something. I guess I'll roll in some footage here. But the nature of this blade shape, this hawkbill with this extreme tip here, is it's very hard to get in and grind a blade and not mess up this tip. Now, twice already I had this tip get caught on the wheel and gouge my wheel, and I'll show you the gouges on the wheel, and have the blade launch out of my hands. Because you're kind of feeling around with a blade like this. You're feeling around and getting your grinds and correcting things. So, my wife was just behind the camera making faces. Hi, darling. So anyway, you're feeling around, and twice already I've had a blade launch out of my hand. And to be honest, I already cut myself really bad from a knife doing that to me once. And not an albatross, but a different knife. So I'm not willing to take that kind of chance again. So at that point I ordered a jig, and I haven't had it do it to me since. Because the angle is locked in. That's why I use a jig. But I see the benefits of it, and I might use it for other models. But as of right now, I'm just using it for the albatross. To wrap it all up, guys, there's no such thing as cheating in knife making. If you're going to use a jig, or if you're not going to use a jig, just be honest about it. It's really not a big deal. I don't know why everybody hides these things. It's not the end of the world. If you're trying to learn freehand. Learn the hard way so you actually learn something. If you take the easy route, you're not going to learn anything. Or you're just going to slow yourself down. So suffer a little bit, and then if you find the jig is the right decision, then by all means go that route. But don't sell yourself short and say you can't do it because you screwed up 2 blades. Fill up a 5-gallon bucket with ruined blades from freehanding, and then decide whether a jig is good or not. Alright, and of course the most important thing is keep your integrity and be honest about everything you do. If it's CNC, if it's jig grinding, if you make stuff in China and have it shipped here and slap your name on it, tell people about it. Because it's integrity that people care about. And they're buying, even if it's made in China, they're still buying a piece of you. Right? Because people buy stuff from people they like. That kind of stuff matters. So don't hide behind your jig. Don't hide behind your CNC. And if you're a freehand purist, and I know quite a few makers that are, I have nothing but respect for those guys. It's not easy, and they deserve every penny they get. But this isn't easy either. You still have to figure this out. So it's not a magic solution. Alright, so draw your own conclusion. Do you think jigs are worth it? Guys, put it in the comments down below if you think jig is a good idea or a bad idea. Is this cheating? You tell me. Alright guys, that's it for this video. Enough rambling. This is Mike here from Ekim Knives, and I'll catch you on the next video.